We're going to use trigonometry to be able to find an unknown side. So on my triangle over here, I can see I've got a side, an angle, and a known side, an unknown side, and an angle. That tells me I'm going to use trigonometry. So I want to identify my sides and then decide which trigonometric relationship I'm going to use. So here's my angle, and relative to my angle, this is the opposite. It's opposite the angle I'm talking about. So I'm going to label this as opposite. And this side is opposite the right angle. When we know the side, it's always opposite the right angle. It's called the hypotenuse. I'm just going to write the first three letters. I don't have to write it all out. So the side I know, the hypotenuse, and the side I don't know, the opposite, or I'm trying to find out. So I'm going to look at my SOHCAHTOA and find the one that involves the opposite and the hypotenuse. So that's the first one. It says the sine, opposite, hypotenuse. So I'm going to write out what those three letters represent. They represent sine of x equals opposite divided by hypotenuse. Opposite divided by hypotenuse. So I'm going to look at my triangle and put in all the information that I know. So sine x, that's the angle, and in our case that's 23. So I'm going to write sine 23 equals the opposite, in our case that's x, divided by the hypotenuse, and in our case that's 8.9. Now we need to solve this equation for x. And one way we can remind ourselves how to do that is to have a formula triangle to be able to help us work out what we're doing. So we can have sine x equals the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. And in this case, we're trying to find the opposite. So we cover that up, and that tells us we need to multiply the sine of x by the hypotenuse. So the sine of x by the hypotenuse. Now, if you were to type that into your calculator, it's possible that your calculator would multiply these two numbers. So there's two ways we can get around that to make sure that it doesn't do the wrong calculation. The first is we can put the 23 into brackets. And the second is we could write it in the other order, 8.9 times the sine of 23. Either way should give us an answer of 3.48, which tells us that this side is 3.48. And a quick check, is it less than the hypotenuse? It is, so it seems to make some sense. Our second triangle, again, the first thing we're going to do is to identify the sides. This is the opposite, because it's opposite our angle. This is the hypotenuse, because it's opposite the right angle. So again, opposite and hypotenuse tell me I'm going to be using sine. X equals opposite divided by hypotenuse, and this formula triangle. So let's fill out my formula with what I know. I've got sine 43, that's my angle, equals the opposite, that's 6.4, divided by the hypotenuse, that's x. So again, we go back to our formula triangle. We can cover up what we want. In this case, it's the hypotenuse, which tells me to find the hypotenuse, I do opposite divided by sine x. So x equals 6.4 divided by sine 43. Plug that into my calculator, and I get an answer of 9.38. X equals 9.38. And the quick check, is our hypotenuse bigger than our opposite? It is, so it seems to make sense.
Okay, Mary, so let's have a look at this one. So solve x plus 2x equals 12. So what do you think you do first?
Okay, well, I want x on its own, so I would put x equals 12 minus 2x.
Okay, so a lot of the time we want to get x by itself, but what we want to do first is get all of these x's together. So can you see anything we can do with this? Get all these together in one place.
Oh, okay, it's 3x, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
3x equals 12. Oh, and so x equals 4.
Brilliant, spot on, well done.